Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Let's Play Skyrim. You'll recall that last time we left off here in the city of Falkreath, and I was ready to speak to Laud, the blacksmith. Let's pick his pocket first. Leave that fresh meat, that's actually a quest item. Gold, key, lockpick, talk to
Did
him.
you see a hound on the road? A fine, strong creature that's been wandering near town?
The guard at the gate mentioned a dog.
I asked the gate guards to look for him. I can't afford to chase him down, but could use a fierce, loyal beast to keep me company. If you are willing to retrieve him for me, I'd give you some fresh meat to attract him out on the road.
I could be convinced to catch him.
Oh, he's a smart man to demand something up front for his work. Some gold now, and some when I have my dog. Here's the meat.
And that actually completes a miscellaneous quest, Speak to Laud. 25 gold, fresh meat added. Find the dog outside Falkreath. Now let's talk to him. For real.
Steel's good, but loyalty's better. I'm loyal to Dengeir first, and the Empire second. Only a hearty soul travels the road these days. The war bleeds Skyrim. It bleeds her dry, and I think none of us are the better for it. Men and women joined the war. They travel far on these roads to spill each other's blood. Falkreath's warriors always return, one way or another. Only a hearty soul travels the road these days.
Sounds like loyalty is important to you.
I was Dengeir's personal guard for years. I risked my hide more than once to protect him. Why would I do that? For money? Because I swore an oath? No. It was because he was a good man and a true friend. A true Nord places loyalty and honor above all else.
Falkreath seems quiet.
Only inside the gates. Much of Falkreath hold is wilderness, and there's plenty of trouble to be had.
Fair enough. So, leave Laud's house, because we actually get some light theft quest in there in a minute.
Arms or armor.
Still got to figure out how to kill that goat. In the meantime, let's head into Grey Pine Goods. We can look around, steal a bit of stuff, maybe. Talk to Boland and Soloff.
Let provincials like you wander Skyrim.
Here's Boland. I want his amethyst. Good God.
Don't
I want his amethyst. Oh, dear Lord. Twice in a row. Come on now. Amethyst, go. I swear, it's just messing with me. Amethyst, gold, key, lockpick. There we go.
I can't believe we let provincials like you wander Skyrim. That Valga Venetia is a gossip and a troublemaker. Yeah?
Alright, well there's him. Here's Soloff, his brother, the shopkeeper. I just need his gold and his lockpick.
Well met. Unlike my brother, I've no dislike of strangers. Met lots of them while I was a Stormcloak. Can I get you something? Looking for something? What do you need, stranger? Can I get you something?
You mentioned a brother? Who is he?
His name's Boland. He's the one who works the lumber mill down by the river. If you meet him, don't expect much in the way of conversation. He ain't one for talking, especially with folk he don't know.
You're a Stormcloak?
I was once, but not anymore. I was wounded in a skirmish up near Windhelm. This was years ago, mind you. Now maybe I don't pick up a blade in Ulfric's name no more, but I still hold with his ideals. Skyrim is Nordland, and we ought to rule it. We don't need no help from the Empire on that count.
Fair enough.
Steal anything from my shop, regret it.
Well, we'll see about that. I do want these salt piles. I want the leather strips. Don't need anything from here.
Look around all you want, but don't try anything funny.
Now let me see. I want iron arrows. Those are useful. I want these ingredients. And let's check upstairs.
Planning to steal something? Don't even think about it.
Get those pine thrush eggs. Gold and a saber cat pelt. And a little bit of loose gold. And that's it. Grapevine goods. Pretty simple. Alright. Now's a good time to cross the street and hit the tavern. Dead Man's Drink. So let's do that. Only worry about taking useful stuff. See, we've read the holds of Skyrim. Not worried about that. I would like these chicken's eggs. Here's our bard, Delacourt. That's gold and a lockpick. Simple enough.
Yes?
He's got absolutely no unique dialogue.
Today's come and gone. For the age of aggression is just
We've read Nord's Arise. Got a gold ice wolf pelt by way of useful stuff. End table, we got gold and nothing. Little loose gold in the coin purse.
Down with Ulfric, the killer of kings. On the day of your death we will drink and we'll
We check the bar. Well, sneak to 38, that's good. And here's a Dance in Fire V6, a speech skill book. It is the 4th speech skill book. There's one left. So, in terms of global free boosts to speech, there's still 10, which is a lot. Let's clean up my lists, and then let's read the book. A Dance in Fire, Chapter 6, by Wogan Jarth. Decimus Scotti sat down, listening to Leode's Juris. The clerk could hardly believe how fat his former colleague at Lord Atreus's building commission had become. The piquant aroma of the roasted meat dish before Scotti melted away. All the other sounds and textures of Prithala Hall vanished around him as if nothing else existed but the vast form of Juris. Scotti did not consider himself an emotional man, but he felt a tide flow over him at the sight and sound of the man whose badly written letters had been the guideposts that carried him from the imperial city back in early Frostfall. "Where have you been?" Juris demanded again. "I told you to meet me in Falinesti weeks ago." "I was there weeks ago," Scotti stammered, too surprised to be indignant. "I got your note to meet you in Athay, and so I went there, but the Khajiit had burned it to the ground. Somehow I found my way with the refugees in another village, and someone there told me that you had been killed." "And you believed that right away?" Juris sneered. "The fellow seemed very well informed about you. He was a clerk from Lord Vanek's building commission named Reglius, and he said that you had also suggested that he come down to Valenwood to profit from the war." "Oh yes," said Juris after thinking a moment. "I recall the name now. Well, it's good for business to have 2 representatives from Imperial building commissions here. We just need to all coordinate our bids, and all should be well." "Reglius is dead," said Scotti, "but I have his contracts from Lord Vanek's commission." "Even better," gasped Juris, impressed. "I never knew you were such a ruthless competitor, Decimus Scotti. Yes, this could certainly improve our position with the Silvenar. Have I introduced you to Bast here?" Scotti had only been dimly aware of the Bosmer's presence at the table with Juris, which was surprising given that the Mer's girth merely equaled his dining companion. The clerk nodded to Bast coldly, still numb and confused. It had not left his mind that only an hour earlier Scotti had intended to petition the Silvenar for safe passage through the border back to Cyrodiil. The thought of doing business with Juris after all, of profiting from Valenwood's war with Elsewhere, and now the second one with Somerset Isle, seemed like something happening to another person. "Your colleague and I were talking about the Silvenar," said Bast, putting down the leg of mutton he had been gnawing on. "I don't suppose you've heard about his nature." A little, but nothing very specific. I got the impression that he's very important and very peculiar. He's the representative of the people, legally, physically, and emotionally, explained Juris, a little annoyed at his new partner's lack of common knowledge. When they're healthy, so is he. When they're mostly female, so is he. When they cry for food or trade or an absence of foreign interference, he feels it too, and makes laws accordingly. In a way, he's a despot, but he's the people's despot. That sounds, said Scotty, searching for the appropriate word, like bunk. Perhaps it is, shrugged Bast, but he has many rights as the voice of the people, including the granting of foreign building and trade contracts. It's not important whether you believe us. Just think of the Silvenar as being like one of your mad emperors, like Pelagius. The problem facing us now is that since Valenwood is being attacked on all sides, the Silvenar's aspect is now one of distrust and fear of foreigners. The one hope of his people, and thus of the Silvenar himself, is that the Emperor will intervene and stop the war. Will he? Asked Scotty. You know as well as we do that the Emperor has not been himself lately. Juris helped himself to Regulus's satchel and pulled out the blank contracts. Who knows what he'll choose to do or not do? That reality is not our concern, but these blessings from the late good Sir Regulus make our job much simpler. They discussed how they would represent themselves to the Silvenar into the evening. Scotty ate continuously, but not nearly so much as Juris and Bast. When the sun had begun to rise in the hills, its light reddening through the crystal walls of the tavern, Juris and Bast left to their rooms at the palace, granted to them diplomatically in lieu of an actual immediate audience with the Silvenar. Scotty went to his room. He thought about staying up a little longer to ruminate over Juris's plans and see what might be the flaw in them, but upon touching the cool, soft bed, he immediately fell asleep. The next afternoon, Scotty awoke feeling himself again. In other words, timid. For several weeks now he had been a creature bent on mere survival. He had been driven to exhaustion, attacked by several jungle beasts, starved, nearly drowned, and forced into discussions of ancient Aldmeri poetical works. The discussion he had with Juris and Bast about how to dupe the Silvenar into signing their contracts seemed perfectly reasonable then. Scotty dressed himself in his old battered clothes and went downstairs in search of food and a peaceful place to think. "You're up," cried Bast upon seeing him. "We should go to the palace now." "Now," whined Scotty. "Look at me. I need new clothes. This isn't the way one should dress to pay a call on a prostitute, let alone the voice of the people of Valenwood. I haven't even bathed. You must cease from this moment forward being a clerk and become a student of mercantile trade," said Leode's Juris grandly, taking Scotty by the arm and leading him into the sunlit boulevard outside. "The first rule is to recognize what you represent to the prospective client and what angle best suits you. You cannot dazzle him with opulent fashion and professional bearing, my dear boy, and it would be fatal if you attempted to. Trust me on this. Several others besides Bast and I are guests at the palace, and they have made the error of appearing too eager, too formal, too ready for business. They will never be granted audience with the Silvenar, but we have remained aloof ever since the initial rejection. I've dallied about the court, spread my knowledge of life in the imperial city, had my ears pierced, attended promenades, eaten and drunk of all that was given to me. I dare say I've put on a pound or two. The message we've sent is clear. It is in his, not our best interest to meet. Our plan worked," added Bast. "When I told his minister that our imperial representative had arrived and that we were at last willing to meet with the Silvenar this morning, we were told to bring you there straight away." "Aren't we late then?" asked Scotty. "Very," laughed Juris. "But that's again part of the angle we're representing. Benevolent disinterest. Remember not to confuse the Silvenar with conventional nobility. His is the mind of the common people. When you grasp that, you'll understand how to manipulate him." Juris spent the last several minutes of the walk through the city expounding on his theories about what Valenwood needed, how much, and at what price. They were staggering figures, far more construction and far higher costs than anything Scotty had been used to dealing with. He listened carefully. All around them the city of Silvenar revealed itself, glass and flower, roaring winds, and beautiful inertia. When they reached the palace of the Silvenar, Decimus Scotty stopped, stunned. Juris looked at him for a moment and then laughed. "It's quite bizarre, isn't it?" That it was, a frozen scarlet burst of twisted, uneven spires as if a rival sun rising. A blossom the size of a village, where courtiers and servants resembled nothing so much as insects, walked about it sucking its ichor. Entering over a bent petal-like bridge, the three walked through the palace of unbalanced walls. Where the partitions bent close together and touched, there was a shaded hall or a small chamber. Where they warped away from one another, there was a courtyard. There were no doors anywhere, no any way to get to the Silvenar but by crossing through the entire spiral of the palace, through meetings and bedrooms and dining halls, past dignitaries, consorts, musicians, and many guards. It's an interesting place, said Bast, but not very much privacy. Of course, that suits the Silvenar well. When they reached the inner corridors, 2 hours after they first entered the palace, guards brandishing blades and bows stopped them. We have an audience with the Silvenar, said Juris patiently. This is Lord Decimus Scotti, the imperial representative. One of the guards disappeared down the winding corridor and returned moments later with a tall, proud Bosmer clad in a loose robe of patchwork leather. He was the Minister of Trade. The Silvenar wishes to speak with Lord Decimus Scotti alone. It was not the place to argue or show fear, so Scotti stepped forward, not even looking toward Juris and Bast. He was certain they were showing their masks of benevolent indifference. Following the minister into the audience chamber, Scotti recited to himself all the facts and figures Juris had presented to him. He willed himself to remember the angle and the image he must project. The audience chamber of the Silvenar was an enormous dome where the walls bent from bowl-shaped at the base inward to almost meet at the top. A thin ray of sunlight streamed through the fissure hundreds of feet above, and directly upon the Silvenar, who stood upon a puff of shimmering gray powder. For all the wonder of the city and the palace, the Silvenar himself looked perfectly ordinary. An average, blandly handsome, slightly tired-looking, extraordinary wood elf of the type one might see in any capital in the empire. It was only when he stepped from the dais that Scotti noticed an eccentricity in his appearance. He was very short. I had to speak with you alone, said the Silvenar in a voice common and unrefined. May I see your papers? Scotti handed him the blank contracts from Lord Vannick's building commission. The Silvenar studied them, running his finger over the embossed seal of the Emperor before handing them back. He suddenly seemed shy, looking to the floor. There are many charlatans at my court who wish to benefit from the wars. I thought you and your colleagues were among them, but those contracts are genuine. Yes, they are, said Scotti calmly. The Silvenar's conventional aspect made it easy for Scotti to speak, with no formal greetings, no deference, exactly as Juris had instructed. It seems most sensible to begin straight away talking about the roads which need to be rebuilt, and then the harbors that the Altmeri have destroyed, and then I can give you my estimates on the cost of resupplying and renovating the trade routes. Why hasn't the Emperor seen fit to send a representative when the war with Elsewhere began 2 years ago? Asked the Silvenar glumly. Scotti thought a moment before replying of all the common Bosmeri he had met in Valenwood. The greedy, frightened mercenaries who had escorted him from the border, the hard-drinking revelers and expert pest-exterminating archers in the western cross of Falinesti, nosy old Mother Pascost in Havel Slump, Captain Balfix, the poor, sadly reformed pirate, the terrified but hopeful refugees of Athay and Grenos, the mad, murderous, self-devouring wild hunt of Vindisi, the silent dour boatman hired by Griff Mallon, the degenerate grasping Bast. If one creature represented their total disposition, and that of many more throughout the province, what would be his personality? Scotti was a clerk by occupation and nature, instinctively comfortable, cataloguing and filing, making things fit in a system. If the soul of Valenwood were to be filed, where would it be put? The answer came upon him almost before he posed himself the question. Denial. I'm afraid that question doesn't interest me, said Scotti. Now can we get back to the business at hand? All afternoon, Scotti and the Silvenar discussed the pressing needs of Valenwood. Every contract was filled and signed. So much was required, and there were so many costs associated that addendums and codicils had to be scribbled into the margins of the papers, and those had to be re-signed. Scotti maintained his benevolent indifference, but he found that dealing with the Silvenar was not quite the same as dealing with a simple, sullen child. The voice of the people knew certain practical, everyday things very well: the yields of fish, the benefits of trade, the condition of every township and forest in his province. We will have a banquet tomorrow night to celebrate this commission, said the Silvenar at last. Best make it tonight, replied Scotti. We should leave for Cyrodiil with the contracts tomorrow, so I'll need a safe passage to the border. We best not waste any more time. Agreed, said the Silvenar, and called for his Minister of Trade to put his seal on the contracts and arrange for the feast. Scotti left the chamber and was greeted by Bast and Juris. Their faces showed the strain of maintaining the illusion of unconcern for too many hours. As soon as they were out of sight of the guards, they begged Scotti to tell them all. When he showed them the contract, Bast began weeping with delight. Anything about the Silvenar that surprised you? Asked Juris. I hadn't expected him to be half my height. Was he? Juris looked mildly surprised. He must have shrunk since I tried to have an audience with him earlier. Maybe there is something to all that nonsense about him being affected by the plight of his people. Alright, let's pickpocket Valga. I just need gold and a lockpick. I do want that coin purse in front of her. Take that salt pile too.
And we'll see it wiped clean of the
And then we just have the 2 bedrooms.
and our
Cave bear pelt, gold and horsehide. Absolutely. Gold. Alright, good. Let's talk to Volga now.
Welcome to Dead Man's Drink. I escaped fighting in Cyrodiil, only to have it track me down again in Skyrim. I'll be right here. Well, I wouldn't complain if we could string together a few sunny days now and then. Welcome to Dead Man's Drink.
Where can I learn more about magic?
The people of Skyrim don't like magic much, so about the only place you're likely to find a teacher is the College of Winterhold.
Heard any rumors lately?
Folks have gone missing the past few weeks. Word now's that our hunters are gone too. Say, if you're traveling, could you keep an eye out for them? Valder and his men, I think they were after bear up north.
Locate Valder's hunting party.
See ya.
That's all pretty straightforward. Now here is Dengeir of Stun. He'll have a miscellaneous quest for us. I want his garnet and his gold. I already have a key to his house.
I was Jarl once, but I was encouraged to step down when I took sides with the Stormcloaks. It was an imperial plot, I tell you. Mind what you say. Be mindful. My maid Tikla has been known to pass information to that pompous nephew of mine, Sidgeir.
Mark,
Enemies and ears, both are everywhere. My nephew has always been handed things, even the title of Jarl. Stendarr protect Falkreath until Skyrim's suns rise. The war has changed Falkreath. Even our neighbors can be our enemies. Be mindful. My maid Tikla has been known to pass information to Sidgeir.
You say there's a plot against you?
Not against me, against all of Falkreath. Those imperial bastards are spying on every one of us. Last night I saw Laud the blacksmith writing a letter. Probably sending word to Solitude and General Tullius. Are you loyal to Skyrim? Break into Laud's house and get that letter.
It will be done.
Good.
Steal the private letter for Dengeir. You said you were the Jarl once?
Aye, not so long ago. Some will tell you I stepped down on account of my old age. Truth is, I found out about all the Imperial spies crawling around Falkreath. A few well-placed bribes, and they bought themselves some friends. Suddenly, the nobles are calling for a new Jarl. And all the while, their pockets are jingling with the sound of Imperial sentence. They named me Thane. They got my nephew Sidgeir in my place. A real friend to Cyrodiil, that one.
Alright.
Mind what you say. The Empire has ears all over this town.
That should do it for here. So now that we have the quest, it makes sense to go poke around in Laud's house. We already ganked his key, so should be pretty easy as long as we take care of business while he's outside working. As usual, I'm only going to steal, or as has become usual, I'm only going to steal the things I really consider useful. I'll go downstairs with that in mind. Iron arrows, sure. Cowhide, gold, sure. Light armor forging, smithing skill book that we have read before, but there's a copy here if you missed it. At least I think we've read it. Yeah, we have. Good. Alright, back upstairs. Zip over here. Whole lot of nothing useful. Loose gold in the coin purse here. Another chest with some gold. And here's the private letter we need to steal. So we can take private letter off my book list down in the notes area. And then we can read it. Old friend, need all the iron ore you can dig up. Double my usual order. I know the mine isn't as rich as it used to be, but I'll pay extra. Lod. Completed, steal the private letter for Dengeir. Bring the private letter to Dengeir. Pretty straightforward. We can do that. He should still be in Dead Man's Drink.
I was young.
Here's Lod's letter.
What's this, some kind of code? Need as much iron ore as you can dig up? Well, he's not spying, but it's clear the Empire's making Lords smith up more swords and armor for them. Good work. Take this.
750 gold, private letter removed. Completed, bring the private letter to Dengeir. That completes the quest, Some Light Theft, for Dengeir. And he's got another task. I think there's supposed to be some intro dialogue that triggers this question, but I've never actually heard it. What exactly do you need from me?
You may have seen the open grave in our graveyard. Most of the townsfolk think it's the work of a corpse thief. The truth is less pleasant. It was the grave of Vigar, my own ancestor. Dead for centuries now. He is also a vampire. My family is entrusted with keeping him buried. But recently, someone stole the ward stone, and Vigar escaped.
And you want me to find the ward stone?
No, it's too late for the ward stone. Vigar must be destroyed. If this gets out, my family will suffer great shame.
I will see that Vigar is destroyed.
Good. He will have fled to gather others of his kind.
Destroy the vampire Vigar.
Mind what you say.
Sure.
The Empire has ears all over this town.
Really quickly, while we're over here, let's take care of finding that dog. We just need to wander down the road a little bit, and he will come to us. There he is.
You are exactly what I was looking for.
Completed. Find the dog outside Falkreath. You were looking for me?
Yeah, I think you'll be just what I need. You see, my name is Barbas, and I have a problem I think you can help sort out.
So what could a dog need help with?
My master and I had a bit of a falling out. We got into an argument and it got rather heated. He's kicked me out until I find someone who can settle our disagreement. That's where you come in.
Sounds easy enough. Let's go find him.
Thank you. Now, since he banished me, Vile's been rather weak. He can't manifest very far from one of his shrines. I know there's a cult that worships him at Hamar's Shame. We should be able to talk to him there. If this works out, I'll make sure you're rewarded. And just don't trust any offer he makes you, okay?
Started. A Daedra's best friend. Travel with Barbas to the shrine of Clavicus Vile. We've already discovered Hamar's Shame, so we can just go do that as soon as we feel like it. I ran into a talking dog named Barbas, who said he had a falling out with his master and wanted my help. He's waiting outside Hamar's Shame. Well, we can go talk to Lod right quick to resolve his little bit of outstanding business.
Steel's good, but loyalty's better. I'm loyal to Dengeir first and the Empire second.
You know that dog on the road you asked me to get?
Yeah.
He ended up being a lot more trouble than he was worth.
Anyway, it's done. Time to move on. Much obliged. Here, It's not much, but take it anyway.
25 gold added. Alright, we got 2 more houses to check out. We'll start with Corpse Light Farm. We nicked a key already, because even though he probably wasn't scripted to be there, Mathes was standing in his yard and we were able to do it. We can make friends with them pretty easily, but since I'm only taking useful stuff anyway, I don't care. Chicken's eggs. Yes. Alright. Troll fat. Good. More ingredients. Now check all the books. I think there's the Restoration skill book, Racial Phylogeny, hiding in there. And I think this is a new one too, the Apprentice's Assistant. Yes, it is. This one's interesting. It's like Killing Before You're Killed, but for mages. So I'll take it off the list and read it. The Apprentice's Assistant, advice from Valenwood's most prestigious spellcaster. No doubt you have heard tales of my adventures, stories carried from province to province, all of Tamriel in awe of my feats of magical prowess. More than once I am sure you have thought if only I had a Ramril's ability, then I too could seek fame and fortune in magic duels. It is true, of course. Great fame and limitless fortune await those who are successful. But to be successful, one needs to learn from the best. That is why you have purchased this book, so that I may teach you. I am, of course, the best. Here then is my advice. Follow it and you too can make a name for yourself throughout Tamriel. 1. To know your opponent is to know his weakness. Infinitely more versatile than a simple blade of steel, a good mage has a wide array of spells at her disposal. More than that, she knows when to best use them. She knows that frost spells can stop a charging beast or keep a savage brute from swinging his sword. She knows that shock spells can drain her opponent's magicka. She knows that illusion spells can set a group of enemies against each other should she find herself in a less than fair fight, an all too common reality when her opponents know they cannot win in single combat, and that there are spells that can save her in a moment when all seems lost. 2. To know yourself is to know your limits. Even the best mage has a finite reserve of magicka. None born yet have been graced with Magnus's infinite reserves of power. And so a good mage does not overextend herself. She makes sure she always has enough magicka to keep herself safe. Failing that, she makes sure she has a sizable supply of potions at the ready. Failing that, she makes sure she always has an escape route. Not that the great Aramril has ever fled a fight, but of course you do not necessarily share her superb natural ability. That is why you must practice. 3. Wards can kill you. There is no question that wards are an essential tool of any aspiring mage. They can block incoming spells, negating your opponent's attack and wasting his magicka. A good mage knows, however, to not rely too heavily on her ward. Keeping a ward readied for too long will leave a caster drained of magicka, unable to retaliate, and at worst, unable to maintain the ward, and therefore completely defenseless. 4. 2 hands are not always better than 1. Any advanced spellcaster has learned to cast spells with both hands, dealing more damage. There are certainly times when this is to your advantage, such as when an opponent is already weakened, or when it is likely to draw a bigger reaction from the crowd that has no doubt gathered to watch you. It is not always the best strategy, however. Concentration spells, for example, can often be used on the ground when an opponent is especially nimble. In that instance, using both hands independently can cover more ground at the same time. A mage throwing fireballs with both hands cannot immediately raise a ward to defend herself or heal while she continues to attack. 5. Always rise to a challenge, especially when you know you can win. Remember that your first priority is of course to stay alive. Following closely behind, though, is your need to please the crowd. You are, after all, depending on their generosity to fund your adventures. Here, then, more than magic comes into play. If you can gain a sense of your opponent's ability before the duel begins, you can enter into the event with confidence. Knowing that you outclass your opponent is of great importance, as it means you can confidently give the crowd a better show. Likewise, knowing ahead of time that you could very well lose a duel, you are afforded an opportunity to suddenly find yourself engaged elsewhere and be unable to attend the event. By no means do I suggest that I have ever done such a thing. I simply find that my great fame occasionally means I am unable to respond to every single request for a duel. Keep these few things in mind, keep your wits about you, and you too can make a name for yourself by putting on great displays of magical prowess. Take care, though, for if you become successful enough, you may find yourself facing a challenge from me. Check the cupboard. Check the end table. Now, we're kind of closing in on the last little bit of stuff to do here in Falkreath. Just be aware that I'm going to skip the jail where Sinding is for a while. I want to do a little exploration. As soon as you start Ill Met by Moonlight, there's a time-sensitive aspect to it, and I want to be able to complete it immediately. So there'll just be a little delay while I do some extra exploring, and actually I think probably while I get started on constructing Lakeview Manor. More on that later. Be aware that although almost all of the grindy, bogus stuff is done, there's one thing left: cutting wood for Hearthfire. It's the single most tedious thing. That animation is long and boring, and I need to go through it 100 times if I want to have enough wood for all my houses. And that's coming up pretty soon. So I will let you know where to skip to if you don't want to watch 100 woodcutting animations. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but that bridge is coming up pretty soon. Because the first thing I'm doing after Falkreath is heading to Embershard for Sidgeir. So anyway, here's Dengeir's Hall. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. I think he's got new books too. The Tale of Drozira is new. So we'll read that. Take it off the list. The Tale of Drozira, transcription and commentary by Sonia Vetta. The following is a tale overheard as told by a Khajiit father to his cub while making camp with one of their caravans. I have attempted to transcribe it as he told it, for the Khajiit do not often speak of their history to outsiders. In truth, I do not believe he would have spoken at all, but for the vast helping of moon sugar he had consumed that night. Come and warm your fur by the fire, Marnashir, and I will tell you of how our Drozira came to be the greatest of all Khajiit. Ed, Drozira I took in this case to be an honored ancestor. The ancient Khajiit heard the great war of Alkosh, the great cat king of time, Ed, known as Akatosh in the Empire and Alduin in Skyrim, and raced to his voice. In 3 days' time they crossed the whole of Tamriel, resting not even for the moon sugar, for such was the speed of the Khajiiti then. They joined with the pride of Alkosh and were his strongest warriors. Lorkaj, Ed, Shore in the Nordic, however, chose to give his roar to the Rawulfarth to spite the Khajiiti warriors, for he was jealous of their devotion to Alkosh. Seeing the ferocity of the Khajiiti warriors, Rawulfarth could not bring himself to put them to death. Using the roar that Lorkaj had given him, he spoke to Masser and Secunda to move to their fullness in the sky. The Khajiiti warriors became Senja, but Lorkaj stripped from them all reason. When Rawulfarth returned to sink his fangs into the Red Mountain, he called upon his people to aid him. Drozira was the only among the Rojit who still remembered, and so was the only one who answered the summons. But these Nord bards are expletive removed, and do not sing of how the great Ash King rode Drozira up the Red Mountain itself to strike at the heart of the Dunmer. Never is it mentioned how Drozira pounced atop Dumalakath, the dwarf orc, for when he had his blade to the throat of the Ash King, so that he could not speak. Nor do they sing of how Lorkaj returned Drozira from the lands of Shegorath for his bravery and for saving the Ash King. So when you find a bard who speaks ill of the Khajiit, you be sure to leave him an iron claw in the back to remind him who saved Skyrim. As for the rest of the Rojit, they grew small and lost their cunning altogether, which is why you should not hesitate to strike them down when they approach the wagons. So it was told by my father, and so I tell it now to you. Now be a good cub and go fetch me some more moon sugar for these sweet cakes. Much of the tale seemed to me little more than a boast, but certain facts do seem to line up with what we believe is the truth behind the legends. It does raise questions as to why we do not know more about history of the Khajiit and what parts they have played that might not have been recorded by our written histories. And another new book, Flight from the Thalmor. Take it off the list and read it too. Flight from the Thalmor. Dearest reader, the work you are about to experience has been copied and duplicated so that the story it relates can be spread throughout the Empire, but make no mistake, this is not a work of fiction. The events chronicled in this account are all true, were originally documented in a private journal which now remains safely guarded in the House of Quills in Hammerfell, and occurred not more than a year before this book was printed. Ashad ibn Khaled, High Scribe, House of Quills, Hammerfell. It's been 9 days. 9 days since I slipped my bonds. 9 days since I strangled my captor with my own chains. And 9 days since I rushed headlong into the night, always listening but never looking back. But in order to understand my current predicament, one must first understand where I came from and just where this story began. My name is Hadric Oakenheart, and I am a proud Nord of Skyrim. I am a skald by trade and received my formal training at the Bard's College in Solitude. For years I made my occupation as a traveling musician and minstrel, and even served several stints as war bard in service to the armies of the various jarls. And it's fairly safe to say that if I weren't a bard, I never would have gotten into this mess to begin with. My troubles began when I first started singing about Talos, the ninth and greatest divine, beloved of the people of Skyrim. Turns out he's not so beloved by the Thalmor. Ah yes, the Thalmor, as common as a head cold in Skyrim these days, and just as annoying, or so I thought at the time, before their true power and influence made itself known. For those not in the know, the Thalmor are Skyrim's recently honored guests, high elves of the Aldmeri Dominion, who were gracious enough not to wipe us all out during the Great War. But, as every Nord of Skyrim knows, Thalmor graciousness comes at a terrible price. One of the stipulations of the White Gold Concordat, the peace treaty between our peoples, was the abolishment of Talos worship. A man ascend to godhood? Preposterous, claimed the Thalmor. And so the open worship of Talos has been outlawed in Skyrim, and actively enforced in those cities where the Thalmor have a tangible presence. Cities, I might add, in which the Empire has the most secure foothold. It was in one of these cities, Markarth to be exact, where I made the conscious decision to defy the ban on Talos worship, and my defiance came in the form of, what else, a song. For what bard who has spent time writing and rehearsing an original work can possibly refrain from performing it? So perform it I did, not once, not twice, but 7 times, once a day for an entire week. Now here's something most of my kinsmen are unaware of. Not all Thalmor in Skyrim are equal in station or purpose. In fact, there is one group in particular that operates secretly in the shadows, watching and waiting for those Nords who break the law and continue their worship of Almighty Talos. These are the Justiciars, and it is their job to enforce this, the most terrible of conditions of the White Gold Concordat. And so I would have performed my song for an 8th time had I been given the opportunity. Sadly, I was not, for the Justiciars had been watching, had been waiting. Instead, I received a black sack over my head in the wee hours of the morning, a dreadfully uncomfortable wagon ride, and sinister promises that I would enjoy my new home, which I came to realize was some sort of secret Thalmor prison or detention camp, one I was certain I would never leave alive. It was at that moment I realized I needed to make my escape. No matter what, even if I died in the attempt, I had to slip the grasp of my captors. Better that than rot in some god's-forsaken Thalmor jail until the end of time. I finally got my chance when the wagon stopped and we made camp for the night. One of my 2 Thalmor guards set off into the forest to hunt, leaving me alone with the other. And so my account comes full circle. It is now 9 days later, and in that time I have realized the true extent of my foolishness. I couldn't have sung the song just once, or maybe twice, or not at all. I couldn't have swallowed my stubborn Nord pride and realized just how much power and influence the Thalmor truly have over the Jarls. No, I could not. So now I run. Like a hare from the hound I run, always moving, rarely resting, never sleeping. But the Thalmor dog my every move. Where will I go? How will I escape their grasp? I honestly don't know. The only thing I now understand for certain is this. If the agents of the Aldmeri Dominion cannot have your soul, then they will take your very life. My name is Hadric Oakenheart, and I am a proud Nord of Skyrim. Remember me, for soon I will be dead. Alright, now that just leaves the graveyard with the Hall of the Dead, and the 3 people who are currently participating in the scripted event there. Let's head down this path to the graveyard. Skip the actual hall for the moment so we can visit the people who are currently attending a funeral in the graveyard.
The god Arche was once like us, bound to winding mortality. But he willingly gave up this existence that we might better understand the vagaries of life and death.
From Indara, I just need a golden lockpick.
It is the ebb and flow of this
Don't even
cosmic
think about
tide
it.
that we find renewal, and in the end, peace.
You can pickpocket Runil for gold, his key, and his lockpick.
May the spirit of Lavinia and all those who have left this world and its suffering know the beloved serenity of Aetherius, and may one day rejoin them in eternity.
That's that. Let's talk to Runil first.
Gust is responsible for the cemetery here in Falkreath. I take care of the shrine. War is not new to Falkreath. You have only to stand in our cemetery to see that. Whip, Dengeir deserves more respect than his nephew, Jarl Siggeir, affords him. Without birth, there is no life. Without death, there is only stasis. Such is the truth of Archay. Gust is responsible for the cemetery here in Falkreath. I take care of the shrine.
You're a priest of Archay. He's got a quest for us.
I am. I came into Archay's light after the Great War. So many died by my hands, my magics. I'm fortunate that Gust and the people of Falkreath have come to accept me as one of their own. Could you do an old elf a favor? I misplaced my journal in a cave I was exploring. I'll pay for its return.
I'll do it.
Blessing of Archay to you for your help.
Find Runil's journal inside South Fringe Sanctum. Fair enough. Do you tend this graveyard alone?
Oh, merciful Archay, no. I'm too old and frail, and this graveyard is too large. Gust is my assistant. He helps me tend the headstones and keep our cemetery clean, as befits a place of rest. That journal means a lot to me, if you find it.
Alright, let's talk to Indara and Maethes now, before they wander off.
Falkreath is a hard place, and tending a farm here is thankless work. Matthias is a kind and wise man. The Nords could use more like him, so could the Imperials. How could people see all the graves in Falkreath and still want to make war? Oh, Falkreath is a hard place, and tending a farm here is thankless work.
That's it. Now, for him, we can turn in some crops to complete a gather wheat favor.
A sad time. Good to talk to you.
I have cabbage to sell.
Honest pay for honest work.
That completes the gather wheat favor. Pretty straightforward. But if we exhaust his dialogue, we'll kick off a new Daedric quest. Is this place always so gloomy?
Yes, and I couldn't tell you why. My wife and I think there's some dark magic at work. Or perhaps Archay's influence is strong here, and he likes to keep it this way.
Why does the town have such a large cemetery?
The cemetery is ancient. It's been here longer than the town. I'm no scholar, but I know that a lot of battles have been fought here over the course of history. After each battle, more dead were buried, and the graveyard got bigger. I heard it's now the biggest graveyard in Skyrim.
Who died?
Our daughter. Our little girl. She hadn't seen her 10th winter.
How did she die?
He ripped her apart, like a saber cat tears a deer. We barely found enough of her to bury.
Who did this?
Sinding. Came through as a laborer. Seemed like a decent man. He's stewing in the pit while we figure out what to do with him. If you've got the stomach to look at him. What could drive a man to do something like this?
Started, ill met by moonlight. Speak to Sinding.
I just don't understand what kind of man does that.
That's all pretty straightforward. Ill met by moonlight. There are stories in Falkreath of a strange vagrant who savagely killed a little girl. Speak to Sinding.
Good to see you again, friend. Indara and I like to keep to ourselves and run our farm. Runel has been a true friend to my wife and I in our time of need. My wife, Indara, has a gift with animals. It makes her a better farmer than anyone I've ever seen. This war isn't needed. Imperials like my wife can be hard to handle, but we Nords could work with them. I should know. I don't know if the war is Archay's will or man's, but it's none of my doings. Indara and I like to keep
All right.
ourselves and run our farm.
That's everybody in town. Let's just finish gathering Nightshade and Bleeding Crown from around the graveyard. And let's search the Hall of the Dead. Just for useful stuff again. While it's still empty. Got a little bit of daylight left before everybody comes back, so should be pretty good. Adra and Daedra we've read. Thing not to miss, besides 2 glass, which is awesome, I now need 39 more. But under the bed is a conjuration skill book, The Doors of Oblivion. In fact, I believe it is the final conjuration skill book. It is. We have now found all 5. And in the larger world of free boosts, there is only 1 conjuration boost left. So, let's get through this book. The Doors of Oblivion by Seyfij Hija. When thou enterest into oblivion, oblivion entereth into thee. Nigh Tyrol Lar. The greatest mage who ever lived was my master Morian Zenus. You have heard of him as the author of the book On Oblivion, the standard text on all on matters Daedric. Despite many entreaties over the years, he refused to update his classic book with his new discoveries and theories, because he found that the more one delves into these realms, the less certain one is. He did not want conjecture, he wanted facts. For decades before and after the publication of On Oblivion, Zenus compiled a vast personal library on the subject of Oblivion, the home of the Daedra. He divided his time between this research and personal magical growth on the assumption that should he succeed in finding a way into the dangerous world beyond and behind ours, he would need much power to wander its dark paths. 12 years before Zenus began the journey he had prepared his life to make, he hired me as his assistant. I possessed the 3 attributes he required for the position. I was young and eager to help without question. I could read any book once and memorize its contents, and, despite my youth, I was already a master of conjuration. Zenus, too, was a master of conjuration, indeed, a master at all the known and unknown schools. But he did not want to rely on his ability alone in the most perilous of his research. In an underground vault, he summoned Daedra to interview them on their native land, and for that he needed another conjurer to make certain they came, were bound, and were sent away without incident. I will never forget that vault, not for its look, which was plain and unadorned, but for what you couldn't see. There were scents that lingered long after the summoned creatures had left, flowers and sulfur, sex and decay, power and madness. They haunt me still to this very day. Conjuration, for the layman unacquainted with its workings, connects the caster's mind with that of the summoned. It is a tenuous link meant only to lure, hold, and dismiss, but in the hands of a master it can be much stronger. The Psijics and Dwemer can, in the Dwemer's case perhaps I should say could, connect with the minds of others and converse miles apart, a skill that is sometimes called telepathy. Over the course of my employment, Zenus and I developed such a link between one another. It was accidental, a result of 2 powerful conjurers working closely together, but we decided that it would be invaluable should he succeed in traveling to Oblivion. Since the denizens of that land could be touched even by the skills of an amateur conjurer, it was possible we could continue to communicate while he was there, so I could record his discoveries. The doors to Oblivion, to use Morian Zenus's phrase, are not easily found, and we exhausted many possibilities before we found one where we held the key. The Sigics of Artaeum have a place they call the Dreaming Cave, where it is said one can enter into the Daedric realms and return. Iatrisis, Sothasil, Nemetai, and many others have been recorded as using this means, but despite many entreaties to the Order, we were denied its use. Celerus, the leader of the Order, has told us it has been sealed off for the safety of all. We had hopes of using the ruins of the battle spire to access Oblivion. The Weir Gate still stands, though the old proving grounds of the Imperial Battle Mages itself was shattered some years ago in Jagar Tharn's time. Sadly, after an exhaustive search through the detritus, we had to conclude that when it was destroyed, all access to the realms beyond, the Soul Cairn, the Shade Perilous, and the Havoc Wellhead had been broken. It was probably for the good, but it frustrated our goal. The reader may have heard of other doors, and he may be assured we attempted to find them all. Some are pure legend, or at any rate not traceable based on the information left behind. There are references in lore to Maruk's Abyss, the Corrington Mirror, the Mantellan Crux, the Crossroads, the Mouth, a riddle of an alchemical formula called Jacinth and the Rising Sun, and many other places and objects that are said to be doors, but we could not find. Some exist, but cannot be entered safely. The whirlpool in the Abetian, called the Maelstrom of Baal, can make ships disappear, and may be a portal into oblivion, but the trauma of riding its waters would surely slay any who tried. Likewise, we did not consider it worth the risk to leap from the Pillar of Thras, a 1,000-foot-tall spiral of coral, though we witnessed the sacrifices the Slodes made there. Some victims were killed by the fall, but some, indeed, seemed to vanish before being dashed on the rocks. Since the Slode did not seem certain why some were taken and some died, we did not favor the odds of the plunge. The simplest and most maddeningly complex way to go to oblivion was simply to cease to be here and begin to be there. Throughout history there are examples of mages who seemed to travel to the realms beyond ours seemingly at will. Many of these voyagers are long dead if they ever existed, but we were able to find one still living. In a tower off Zephyrbal Bay on the island of Vardenfell in the province of Morrowind there exists a very old, very reclusive wizard named Divaith Fear. He was not easy to reach, and he was reluctant to share with Morian Zenas the secret door to oblivion. Fortunately, my master's knowledge of lore impressed Fear, and he taught him the way. I would be breaking my promise to Zenas and Fear to explain the procedure here, and I would not divulge it even if I could. If there is dangerous knowledge to be had, that is it. But I do not reveal too much to say that Fear's scheme relied on exploiting a series of portals to various realms created by a Telvanni wizard long missing and presumed dead. Against the disadvantage of this limited number of access points, we weighed the relative reliability and security of passage and considered ourselves fortunate in our informant. Morian Zenas then left this world to begin his exploration. I stayed at the library to transcribe his information and help him with any research he needed. Dust, he whispered to me on the first day of his voyage. Despite the inherent dreariness of the word, I could hear his excitement in his voice echoing in my mind. I can see from one end of the world to the other in a million shades of gray. There is no sky or ground or air, only particles floating, falling, whirling about me. I must levitate and breathe by magical means. Zenas explored the nebulous land for some time, encountering vaporous creatures and palaces of smoke. Though he never met the prince, we concluded that he was in Ash Pit, said to be the home of Malakath, where anguish, betrayal, and broken promises like ash filled the bitter air. The sky is on fire, I heard him say as he moved on to the next realm. The ground is sludge but traversable. I see blackened ruins all around me like a war was fought here in the distant past. The air is freezing. I cast blooms of warmth all around me, but it still feels like daggers of ice stabbing me in all directions. This was Cold Harbor, where Molag Bal was prince. It appeared to Zenas as if it were a future Nirn under the King of Rape, desolate and barren, filled with suffering. I could hear Morian Zenas weep at the images he saw, and shiver at the sight of the imperial palace spattered with blood and excrement. Too much beauty, Zenas gasped when he went to the next realm. I am half blind. I see flowers and waterfalls, majestic trees, a city of silver, but it is all a blur. The colors run like water. It's raining now, and the wind smells like perfume. This surely is Moonshadow, where Azura dwells. Zenas was right, and astonishingly, he even had audience with the Queen of Dusk and Dawn in her Rose Palace. She listened to his tale with a smile and told him of the coming of the Nerevarine. My master found Moonshadow so lovely he wished to stay there half-blind forever, but he knew he must move on and complete his journey of discovery. I am in a storm, he told me as he entered the next realm. He described the landscape of dark twisted trees, howling spirits, and billowing mist, and I thought he might have entered the deadlands of Mehrunes Dagon. But then he said quickly, "No, I am no longer in a forest. There was a flash of lightning, and now I am on a ship. The mast is tattered, the crew is slaughtered. Something is coming through the waves. Oh gods! Wait, now I am in a dank dungeon in a cell." He was not in the Deadlands, but Quagmire, the nightmare realm of Vernima. Every few minutes there was a flash of lightning and reality shifted, always to something more horrible and horrifying. A dark castle one moment, a den of ravening beasts the next, a moonlit swamp, a coffin where he was buried alive. Fear got the better of my master, and he quickly passed to the next realm. I heard him laugh. I feel like I'm home now. Morian Zenas described to me an endless library, shelves stretching on in every direction, stacks on top of stacks. Pages floated on a mystical wind that he could not feel. Every book had a black cover with no title. He could see no one, but felt the presence of ghosts moving through the stacks, rifling through books, ever searching. It was Apocrypha, the home of Hermaeus Mora, where all forbidden knowledge can be found. I felt a shudder in my mind, but I could not tell if it was my master's or mine. Morian Zenas never traveled to another realm that I know of. Throughout his visits to the first 4 realms, my master spoke to me constantly. Upon entering the Apocrypha, he became quieter, as he was lured into the world of research and study, the passions that had controlled his heart while on Nirn. I would frantically try to call to him, but he closed his mind to me. Then he would whisper, "This cannot be. No one would ever guess the truth. I must learn more. I see the world, a last illusion shimmer. It is crumbling all around us." I would cry back to him, begging him to tell me what was happening, what he was seeing, what he was learning. I even tried using conjuration to summon him as if he were a Daedra himself, but he refused to leave. Morian Zenas was lost. I last received a whisper from him 6 months ago. Before then, it had been 5 years, and 3 before that. His thoughts are no longer intelligible in any language. Perhaps he is still an Apocrypha, lost but happy, in a trap he refuses to escape. Perhaps he slipped between the stacks and passed into the madhouse of Sheogorath, losing his sanity forever. I would save him if I could. I would silence his whispers if I could. And other than dealing with that goat, we are now finished in Falkreath and ready to head out to Embershard Mine. So, what I'd like to do, if I can, is just figure some way to deal with this thing. I wonder if I can convince him to follow me out of town. So I think if I can convince him to follow me away from all these folks, an animal allegiance might be a great way to do that. I was going to say, I could have sworn I saw him coming after me. And even if I can't do it that way, maybe I won't get dinged with the assault charge if it thinks we're friends. That one worked. Wonder if I can do it again.
By the order of the Jarl, stop right there.
That one didn't. Oh, come on now. He acted like he was going to follow me. Wonder why he stopped. I also wonder who sees me now.
You have committed crimes against Skyrim and her people. What?
Maybe just one more. Ooh, or maybe this might be good. Maybe I can frenzy him. Shit, that's been the way to do it all along, hasn't it? Good. And of course he has no horns.
Those warriors from Hammerfell?
So the next thing I want to do since it's a return visit, someplace I've already been, is go kill the leader of Embershard for Sidgeir. So I'm going to head over there, prepared to do that on the next video, and end this episode now. Ah, look, the exterior bandit's even still dead. Good. Alright. Good old Embershard mine. It's been ages. It's all good, though. Alright, folks, this has been Let's Play Skyrim. We're all done with the town of Falkreath. Next time, we'll do Embershard Redux, and then, I think, probably, get cracking on Lakeview Manor, our first constructible Hearthfire home. Until then, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy my videos, please consider clicking on an ad, liking, sharing, subscribing. It would really help me out. Even if you do none of the above, know that I really appreciate the time you spend watching, and hope you have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.